Who is Jesus Christ? Part 2 of this video. 1. The nature of his birth identified Jesus as the Christ. And the angel answered and said to her, The Holy Spirit will come upon you, and the power of the Highest will overshadow you. Therefore, also, that Holy One who is to be born will be called the Son of God. Luke 1:34-35. Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take to you Mary your wife, for that which is conceived in her is of the Holy Spirit. Matthew 1:20. Matthew the Apostle went on to explain, All this was done that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the Lord through the prophet, saying, Behold, the virgin shall be with child, and bear a son, and they shall call his name Immanuel, which is translated, God with us. Matthew 1:22-23. This was not a man that was begotten of man. This was God's only begotten Son. John 3:16. To the events of his life identified Jesus as the Christ, for they were the fulfillment of prophecy. He was of the seed of Abraham, of the tribe of Judah, of the house of David, and born of a virgin. He was born in Bethlehem, called out of Egypt, and raised in Nazareth. There are over 300 prophecies of Christ fulfilled in the life of Jesus. 3. His teachings identify him as the Christ. There is no greater sermon in history than the Sermon on the Mount. This knowledge, wisdom, and authority could not have originated in a carpenter's shop. Jesus attributed his words to God, saying, As my Father taught me, I speak these things. John 8:28. For his miracles identify him as the Christ. Matthew the Apostle wrote, And when John had heard in prison about the works of Christ, he sent 2 of his disciples and said to him, Are you the coming one, or do we look for another? Jesus answered and said to them, Go and tell John, the things which you hear and see. The blind see and the lame walk. The lepers are cleansed and the deaf hear. The dead are raised up and the poor have the gospel preached to them. Matthew 11:2-5. 5. While each of these evidences identifies Jesus as the Christ, the greatest proof is the fact of his resurrection. They were so certain that just 50 days after Christ was crucified, in the very city in which he was tried, in the very presence of those who had slain him, they declared that this same Jesus whom you have taken by lawless hands, have crucified and put to death, God raised up. Acts 23-24. He now reigns as the blessed and only potentate, the King of kings and Lord of lords. 1 Timothy 6:15. His law is the law, his gospel is the gospel, and his church the church. The Apostle John wrote, And truly Jesus did many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not written in this book. But these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that believing you may have life in his name. John 20:30-31.